There's nothing coming
Uh,
up. Oh, that's
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yep.
Yeah, the computer knows what it's doing. That's why we have to follow it. Yeah.
Yeah.
G'day, everybody. This is Alabar Jones with our guest Luke Balke here. Now, Luke and I have known each other for quite some time, and it's rare to find such a talented astrologer as Luke. So, what I wanted to do today was introduce him. And also, he has some highly relevant news for us as to what's going on with the stars right now. And so I wanted to share that with you because I think it'll change the plans of everybody who understands this. So I'm going to pass it straight over to you, Luke. How are you today, brother?
Mate, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, absolutely. We're going to jam pack a lot into this little session. I want to talk about the big picture because we are the little micro picture, the microcosm playing out underneath this macrocosm. So the as above, so below, as within, so without. Well, let's look up there and see what's happening because that's a big story playing out. It's a story of the stars, a story of us. And we're playing out a miniature version of that down here. So when certain astrological alignments occur up there, it correlates to certain experiences that we go through down here. And more importantly, especially when we're talking about the big outer planets, we're talking about their impact, effect, or correlation to the evolution of consciousness. And we're at the cusp of a new era of consciousness, the likes that we haven't seen in living history, maybe 12,000 years of
Oh,
evolution.
only 12,000. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So very significant, and we're all living through it. So, we've all got our mundane lives and, sort of hopes, wishes, and dreams and desires to fulfill and live out. But sometimes we need to step back and look at the big picture and realize there's a bigger sort of story at play. So it
Yeah.
really helps to shape our the way we navigate through changing times.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it seems to be now, and it's reflected in the astrology, but it seems to be now that we're moving into a time that things are going to change and change rapidly,
Hmm.
and we need to be prepared for that. So, and chaos is a word that we use, absolutely. Chaos is unpredictability. Chaos is things happening unexpectedly, changes that are happening
Hmm.
quick and rapid to the old way of living, the old reality, the old systems that we've been used to, and they're all sort of collapsing around us. So as that happens, it allows for the transition of reality, but also
Hmm.
consciousness. And it's a necessary thing. And when it can be challenging is when we're not prepared for the change. So as an astrologer, that's what I do with my clients on a one-to-one basis is I prepare them individually for the macrocosm sort of shifts.
So, although we're all swimming towards our own individual goals and we all have our own plans about where we want to get to, um, seeing where the tides are going and which way the currents that we're swimming in are going, where the eddies are, yeah, that information will really help you surf the wave of what comes next.
Absolute perfect analogy. And in fact, what I use is I use the analogy of a vessel or a raft or a boat going down a river.
Hmm.
And we're all on a vessel and we're all going down a river.
Hmm.
So to understand the vessel, you understand your own sort of dynamics and your
Yep.
own life path. And am I on a raft or am I on a yacht? Am I on a speedboat or am I on a fucking a log?
Yep.
So that's the personal astrology. The river that we're on, we're all on the same river. We're just flowing in different directions and going different ways, right? So that's the
Mhm.
collective energy of well, this is where we're going. So what's been happening is, and especially in 2025 into 2026, is the banks of this river that we're all going down are going to sort of come narrower and narrower and narrower. So you have
Yep.
the same amount of energy, but you have a much more defined area that it has to move through. So what happens is things happen much quicker. And the shifts that are going to occur are going to be on our consciousness. And then as we integrate the shifts in our consciousness, there has to be massive change here in the physical realm.
Hmm.
And that's what we're going to go through. The beginning of that, really, as we go through into this year, next year. And the sort of precursor to this, September 11,
Yep.
2020, those big events. And now we're sort of, okay, it's full steam ahead. So hang on tight to whatever raft you're on, or sit back and relax and drink your champagne, whatever boat you're
Yeah.
on.
It's-
But But prepare because the rapids will increase and so too will the speed.
So too will the turbulence, the speed, and you'll be watching people crashing left and right on, yeah, as they navigate their turbulences. But
Like any big changes or shifts, there's always casualties. And the more aware you are of the pathway, the less likely you are to fall victim of the flow.
well, look, you see the events coming. You can choose to be a winner or a loser. You have some influence in that, and
Yep.
so yeah, the whole point of this is to tell you which to give you some guidance on where that's at. So, without
Yep.
further ado, we'll let Luke bust out his expertise because there's a lot going on with this fella.
I,
He knows his stuff.
I can get on a bit of a ramble. So if it get too far, if you've got questions, please
Well, look,
interrupt.
let's try and get it to 45 minutes because I think 45 minutes is a good solid ramble, a good rant.
Yeah.
Not,
Now,
yeah.
in order to do this, I'm going to bring up an astrological chart. Um, that's I'm going to point out and sort of show certain things. Now, if
Mhm.
this is over your head and you're sort of like, I don't make sense, that's okay. Just listen to the way I describe it. I'm always going to refer to the planet and what it represents, and then how to understand that energy as we sort of experience this reality. So, this is astrological birth chart. It's just a map of the earth and sky at this moment that we're going through at the moment. And what we're interested in when we look at this is the outer planets. We have our sun and moon, which are personal planets, luminaries. Then we have our Mercury, Venus, and Mars, our inner planets. Then we have the trans sort of personal planets, which are social planets, Jupiter and Saturn. And they connect the personal to the collective. And then we have the collective, which is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So when we're talking about significant changes, world events, shifts within, geopolitical changes, uprisings, revolutions, wars, you name it, we're looking at the outer planets' impact and effect. In 2023, Pluto began its first ingress into Aquarius, and in 2024, it made its permanent ingress into the sign of Aquarius. And we haven't experienced that for 250 years. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was a time of the American independence and the French Revolution. So you've got to put your mindset into the collective at that period. And what were people doing? Well, in America, they wanted independence from the crown, right? So the American independence was associated to this sort of Pluto in Aquarius energy coming in, which is about freedom and liberation and the desire to be sovereign. And then it also ties in with the French Revolution, which was the people uprising against the sitting regime of government because they'd become out of touch with the people.
Well, look,
So
and that was the end of those two together as signaled the end of monarchy. Not the death of monarchy, but its absolute power was never recovered.
absolutely. And you can sort of see that same theme playing out now as
Mhm.
we look to the system, the government, the political landscape, and it's like, what the hell? There's it's very obvious, especially through the Western world, that the ruling class are way out of touch with the common person, and they're pandering to some sort of hidden aspect of control here. So this is very Plutonic in its theme. What causes this evolution is that there's this hidden aspect to what's going on that when Pluto moves into Aquarius, we start to see
Mhm.
it for the first time. And as we see it, we go, hang on a second, I thought, the people in charge were doing the best for the good of everyone. And you realize, no, they're just
And
puppets for a ruling class that's hidden in the shadows.
I think in the last few years that's become clearer and clearer. But the way you describe it, this is a natural function of Pluto shifting into Aquarius.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is what happens when Pluto comes into Aquarius because Pluto's realm is the underworld. In Greek mythology, he was Hades, the god of the underworld.
Mhm.
And what is that's a representation of the unconscious. Whereas Aquarius, though, is the sign of awakened consciousness. So this is where we move out of the belief of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius, or the age of knowing. What do we know? Well, we can see, right? We have objective perspective, right? We can see the big picture. So Pluto brings a lot of this stuff that's been hidden and concealed, especially when it comes to the way society, culture, and governments and things have been organized. It brings all this hidden subversive stuff to the consciousness of the people, to the collective. And it's like you wake up to this and go, what the? Actual fuck.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, well, that's been the last 5, 10 years in politics. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So Pluto is a slow moving outer planet. It takes around 250 years to go through the entire zodiac.
Mm.
It only moves a degree or two every single year. It's going to spend in until about 2044 in the sign of Aquarius. So this is a long process. However, some of the other planets are making alignments to this Pluto, which is sort of amplifying its quality. And then as we move over the last sort of 5 years of this decade, we're going to have the North Node move into Aquarius, which means all the eclipses for a 2.5 year period are going to be on North Node with Pluto. So 2028, 2029 in particular,
Mhm.
maybe even a little bit of 2027, we're going to have eclipses, North Node eclipses, which are solar eclipses. They're always harbinger of massive change. And we're going to have them lining up with this plutonic energy. So we are going, that's like at the moment, what we're standing at the beach and the sun hasn't come up, but we can see the light of the next day. And the light of this shift, this change is reaching our consciousness, even though the actual change hasn't happened. And how we experience that is we go, whoa, hang on a second, something's coming. You can
Something
feel the
big's going to
change.
happen here. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, something big. And when you're dealing with Pluto, interestingly, it's the smallest planet, but packs the biggest punch. One of the core ingredients in nuclear explosion is plutonium, right? Why? Because it's just a tiny little splitting of a tiny little atom, but it releases such a huge force. That force, when unleashed, is going to impact the collective consciousness in a way in which we haven't experienced. And the last time it happened, you had revolution and, freedom and
And look, and these are called Enlightenment era events. Like this is when the world woke up to monarchy, woke up to
yeah,
meritocracy, where,
yeah,
and these were such critical functions that allowed particularly Western Europe, to lead the world in better and worse ways. But it was because they were on the cusp of that, that they were able to dominate the entire globe.
yeah. And interesting you say Western Europe, because I feel like where a lot of the real life sort of worldly events that are going to play out to trigger this shift are going to probably be European
Hmm.
initially. Middle East, European, Russia sort of involvement first, and then it'll sort of spill out from there. It ties it back into that epoch, the last time this sort of alignment was happening. So that's just one of the many, many indicators. Now, if that was on its own, we'd be going, okay, this is going to be a time of change.
Hmm.
When Pluto first moved into the previous sign of Capricorn, which rules government and institutionalized systems, so banking,
Hmm.
um, as Pluto ingressed into Capricorn in 2008, we had the global financial crisis, the collapse of subprime mortgages, and the banking crisis.
Hmm.
So you tend to get these events associated with the Pluto energy that are mass events, and they affect a large portion of the collective.
Well, what if I said that the point of Pluto's talent or Pluto's function is to crush the lie?
Yeah.
Is that a good word? Is that a good phrase for it?
Yeah, so let's look at it on an individual level. When
Hmm.
you're under the influence of a Pluto transit
Yep.
or Pluto natally for you is being activated, it's a time in your life where the core truth of what's really at the heart of the matter comes to the surface. Why it can be challenging is because if that core truth is I've spent all my life as a doctor and I don't want to do this anymore, the core truth is the end of the career. If it's I'm married and I don't have the same feelings or desire for my partner anymore, the core truth is the destruction of the marriage. So it tends to deal with really intense experiences of massive change because what has to happen is that core truth must come to light. And that's the guiding principle is that the truth will set you free. Absolutely, but it's frightening as fuck for most people.
Yeah, no, but it's remember that you're on a river and you're going to go through a rapid. That's the only way it's ever going to function for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't confront the truth, imagine your vessel has a leak and you're just like avoiding it.
Yeah, no, that leak, it's not doing anything. It's just kitsch, just so it looks
Exactly.
good. Yeah, whatever. Like yeah, you're
Exactly.
gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, let's come back to that Pluto because it's still involved in this story as we move forward. Then we move to the other outer planet, Neptune, and Interestingly, Pluto and Neptune sort of swap their orbital plane, and sometimes
Mhm.
like Neptune is actually the furthest object in our solar system rather than Pluto. So they have a similar sort of time frame. Neptune's not as long; it's about 150 years to go through the zodiac. So again, Pluto into Aquarius, no one alive in this moment has experienced it. Maybe in past lives we've been through these times. Whereas Neptune moving into Aries is the same thing. We haven't in this time frame experienced this energy. How do we
Mhm.
understand Neptune? Neptune is about transcendence of the physical into oneness and connection to the all. So the way in which it does that is it dissolves connection to reality. It's a bit like when the tide comes in every day and the waves slowly erode the shore. Over a period of time, that erosion creates a new boundary for the shoreline. And that
Yeah.
effect of that erosion is like a Neptunian effect. What's the idea is to merge the land and the sea into oneness again.
I,
Right.
I
So
I think I think Jimi Hendrix said, "And castles made of sand fall in the sea eventually." And that's a Uranus. It's a Neptune statement.
yeah, absolutely. Or that song Dust in the Wind.
Yep. Yeah, like he must have been going through a Neptune transit in his life.
If
Must
anyone's
must have
ever
happened.
if anyone's ever cremated a loved one and then spread their ashes, and you see like they returning to like their body returning to that oneness, like it just dissolves into the atmosphere.
There
You
is
know,
nothing. Yeah.
so Neptune's effect is disillusionment or a dissolving quality, and it's dissolving away or washing away the fixed nature of the reality that was.
And
So
so how about some mixed metaphors here? The
yeah,
writing on the wall gets washed away in the sand, and then we have a chance to get a new writing on the wall.
yeah, yeah. What Neptune tends to do is its influence uh, affects everyone. So to give you an example, Neptune from I think 2011-ish around that time has been moving through the sign of Pisces.
Hmm.
And from then until now, 2012 through till now, the quality of Pisces is to spiritualize things.
Hmm.
And we had a massive reawakening of spiritual sort of connection with people and coming back into mainstream, and
Yeah,
everyone sort of connecting back to this idea of what spiritual. There's lots of different expressions of it. You've got the complete
totally,
new
totally.
age love and light sort of crystal clutches to the other people that are on the occult end of this, but in a way, it's really influencing the masses, and everyone's
Oh,
become a little bit more spiritualized, right?
yeah, the whole industry has flourished over the latest period.
Yeah, and the qualities of each of these signs, they're really defined and contained.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas when you put Neptune in it, it doesn't, you can't define it anymore. It just it merges into everything. Imagine putting dye in water and all of a sudden a little tiny bit of dye, but it just everything gets changed to that color. So it's a bit like that. Everything gets spiritualized in Pisces. Now we're moving into Aries. So we've all come into this idea of identity. Well, who am I? But also Aries is about asserting oneself, right? Expressing oneself, saying me, mine, and I. And usually we're able to contain that and direct that quality in a functional way, right? Which is to be assertive, to be direct, to be confident.
Hmm.
Sometimes too with areas we're dealing with war and we're dealing with aggression and the way in which we express it. So in March this year, Neptune moved into Aries, and what I've personally experienced, and you may have too, is everyone's a little more edgy. Everyone's a little bit more like, fuck you. It
Yep.
doesn't take much of a vibe at the moment to trigger people. And there's only little tiny things. And all of a sudden you get all this Aries energy come out, which is like, hey, buddy, you want to fight?
Hey, what are you talking about? Yeah, no, it's really yeah. Everybody's got a
Absolutely.
short the fuses of humanity have just shortened quite a bit. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So we've all come into that sort of, we're getting our own personal integration of what Aries is. And one aspect of that is the warrior. So
Hmm.
what is your warrior? How does your warrior fight? How do you defend yourself? How do you attack if you're threatened, right?
Hmm.
How do you sort of express that quality and that energy? And we're all sort of tapping back into that. Now, Neptune in Aries is one of the alignments that I suspect as we come to awakening of the truth of this Pluto into the collective and Neptune in Aries, which is probably two of the things that are going to move us towards upheaval and conflict, global conflict, right? So we've got Aries as the sign of war, the warrior, and aggression. And then you've got this Neptune, which dissolves the boundaries of that. And now we're all at war, right? Ultimately, if we're all at war, if we bring this back to the personal, we're all at war with ourselves initially. And as we awaken our consciousness and we look at this world and this world we've unconsciously all partaken in the creation of, we're going, what the fuck is this? And we become into conflict with ourselves, the part of ourselves that we've buried. So that conflict that we're in as we go through this shifting of consciousness will play out physically for us, and most likely over this Neptune in Aries, probably the next year to 2 to 3 years, we'll be in global conflict.
Mm.
Without doubt, we'll be in some sort of localized war, uprising, civil unrest that might even spread to like global war. And I say that with an asterisk, not to create fear or anxiety,
Oh,
but again, to sort of say, hey, if you're going down the river and all of a sudden there's an army either side shooting bullets, you want to make sure that you've got a way to navigate through that.
well, look, I'm hearing that Pluto is about dispelling, this Pluto in Aquarius is about dispelling the myth and crushing the lie. And then everyone's at war with Neptune in Aries.
Yeah.
And so but when you say that, what I really hear is that everybody has had enough of government. So it's pitchforks and torches time. This is the alignment we're in.
So yes, but so how does the ruling class um, mm, defer that energy? Well, they go to war, right? Rather
Yeah,
than
yeah.
going, rather
And
than you going to war with them, they go to war,
I
Or,
just and the most recent, sorry, and I'll tell you that that is a really big practice. Bill Clinton never saw the inside of a courtroom over Monica Lewinsky. Why? Because he bombed Iraq for a little while, said I'm too busy with the war. Tony Fauci was due in the Supreme Court of the US the same week that the war in Ukraine kicked off. Netanyahu in Israel was also due to go to court for was it treason? No, it was corruption.
yep.
Either both, I don't think there's a law that guy hasn't broken. But instead, what did he do? He decided to start bombing Iran. He started to shoot missiles at Iran. And let's just understand clearly how much these punks are willing to sacrifice to save their own ass. I cannot understate that.
It's not only to save their own asses, to maintain power and control.
Yeah.
So, if they understand that people are starting to sort of wake up and go, hang on a minute.
Yeah. You
What,
guys haven't told us the truth in
right.
decades.
And why are we giving so much power to so few?
Yeah,
So that disillusionment, so this is Neptune's energy, is we're disillusioned with the ruling class. We're disillusioned with the current authority. We're disillusioned with government and the politicians. We're disillusioned with the corporate leaders. We're just like, what the fuck is this?
yeah,
Because our
yeah.
basic ways of living and lifestyle and things like that, they're not being considered anymore. They're not being respected. They're not being cultivated or protected.
Or
And
no, no, we're being thrust out in the cold there, like
yeah,
and financially in a big, big way. But then
yes.
you also have guys like Jeffrey Epstein and P. Diddy, and you see how the ruling caste lives, and you go, these guys shouldn't be in charge of a shoebox, let alone the whole world, like.
Well, that's exactly right. Rules for thee, but not for thee. The rules for me, but not for thee, right? So, and this is the type of fuel of revolution. This is uprising energy. This is like, fuck, we
100%.
had enough. And,
Yeah.
we talk about everyone's at war. A higher aspect of Neptune in Aries is this is a spiritual war. So this
You're talking to the right guy when you say that. Like you're talking to precisely the right guy.
Absolutely. So if you look at it like this, the people that are literally playing out the mechanisms of government control and politician and all of that, and the shadow aspect of that,
Mhm.
they're driven by dark force, right? So when you realize that in your consciousness and awakening, like you're going to war with this, you have to armor yourself with your spiritual fucking connection so that you can navigate this because this isn't about, you know, Democrat or Republican. It's not about it. It's not about it. This is a
It's
war
not about
against
left or right. It's about the whole game is going to come apart in the
absolutely.
next.
Yeah.
And, as a and this alignment is a trigger for that.
It
It's
correlates.
what you know. There's a point I think you're getting to,
Yeah.
and but it's not defined which way it's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. We have, so with Pluto and Aquarius, never, well, maybe in the last time that was in Aquarius, but we, the people, have so much power in the sense of how this plays out and what happens. Now, if we succumb to the fear and propaganda and the war machine and the theater of war and all those things, and we allow that to define our reality and our reaction and response to our fellow human and man, then we're not learning any lessons, and they'll reset us back as they want to do. They'll reset our consciousness. They'll press the Control Alt Delete button, and we go back. So, you know,
They'll rewrite history, you know, and they'll rewrite the story where we trust them absolutely, because they
absolutely.
saved us from who was it, the Russian terror this time, or who, what, the Chinese terror, whatever the story is, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So the quality to navigate this is objectivity, detachment, don't get caught into it, but also be very conscious of how you are choosing to respond to what is going on. And if you're in outrage and uproar and in defiance or resistance to their darkness, you're feeding the very thing you're trying to free yourself from.
Yeah.
So
So
the,
don't respond to the whole thing in anger.
no,
Con
no.
Anger in this period, anger is how you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll become a casualty of this shift, this massive
Hmm.
shift, which ultimately I see as light winds, humans awaken, we live
Hmm.
more freely in sovereignty, and we move into the age of Aquarius.
Hmm.
Um, but there's a big
It's not
there's a lot of
defined.
rapids to get through before we get there, right?
Hmm.
There's a lot of rapids to get through. So we'll come back to Neptune as well, because there's another planet I want to introduce, which is Uranus. And we're dealing with Pluto, we're dealing with the unconscious. With Neptune, we're dealing with higher consciousness of the dream, the imagination, the
Hmm.
spiritualized, consciousness, where we understand the oneness of everything. There is no separation between you, me, and Putin or Trump. There's no separation. There's all a connection because we're all one consciousness, right?
Hmm.
So Bill Hicks sort of stuff that we get into that. When we get to Uranus, we're dealing with collective consciousness. So we've got the unconscious, the spiritualized consciousness. Now we've got collective consciousness. And what we deal with Uranus is a higher aspect of this. He's the god that's one of the rulers of Aquarius, right?
Hmm.
And deals with awakened consciousness. So he's like the knowledge of the higher self that comes down and impresses upon the lower self. You have your rational reasoning thinking mind,
Hmm.
and then you have your higher mind. Whenever you have a Uranian type moment, you have a revelation, a breakthrough, an aha, or an epiphany. Something just shifts, a light goes off or on, and you can see something in a different way. Whenever you've had that experience, you've had a Uranian effect in your life. The
Hmm.
the reason for that is because the world as it is and your situation or your reality is defined by Saturn because it rules what is and what was. And if we maintain what is and what was and the tradition of that and perpetuate it, we atrophy, decay, and die because it doesn't allow for growth and change.
There's no
Uh,
evolution if you
you
cling on to
say
the past. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Whereas built into this realm and this reality we live is the constant death and rebirth cycle, right?
The constant
So
need to be flexible and reinvent yourself.
that's right. So Uranus is the harbinger of sudden and unexpected, chaotic, rebellious, revolutionary, revelationary
Yeah.
change.
What could go wrong there? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, it moves around 84 years to go through the entire zodiac. So the last time Uranus was in Gemini was in the 1940s, which coincided with the Second World War. And that's not to say that Uranus is the reason we went to war, but it correlated to a period of time where we were at war. So you've got this revolutionary energy, this uprising, this truth coming to light. You've got this disillusionment of the old system. You've got people embracing their warrior. We're at war with ourselves and everyone. And then you have this sort of chaos energy coming in to shift things and shift things quickly. So Uranus, when it's into Gemini, is making an alignment back to Pluto called a trine. So it unifies their energies. So now we're not only dealing with Uranus, we're dealing with Uranus and Pluto together. So we're dealing with very powerful crisis-driven or chaotic-driven change. So then you put Neptune in the middle of that, and we've got this sort of spiritualized aspect component, and they're all unifying, collectively coming together. And we haven't experienced that. So even back in the last French Revolution, American independence, we had Pluto and Uranus in similar position they're in now, but Neptune wasn't where it was. So the
Right.
fact that Neptune is now there, all these outer planets are really coming together in a way to sort of say, right, well, it's time because they represent generational changes. It's time for massive change. Um, we've got
Wow.
Uranus into the sign of Gemini. So Gemini is your logical mind, your thinking mind, your perception, how you see the world, and also rules over transportation and navigation and communication. So we're going to see a lot of changes, rapid changes, and significant changes in the way we communicate, how we navigate, how we move around the world,
All
even
right.
our
Okay.
the
That's
monetary system. With Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus into Gemini, the monetary system absolutely will change under their influence.
hmm
And you're looking at this digitized cryptocurrency. What's a crypt? Well, crypt's an underground fucking tomb. Well, that's Pluto, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, no. Well, look, and you know, our 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 opposition, the elites, they have staff astrologers to help them time events perfectly. And
Abs-
what you've described is they're ramping up for crypto for they're not calling it a CBDC anymore. It's called a stable coin. But yeah, dodge them like the plague. That's the control. What they're trying to surf this wave as well.
Yeah,
Massive revolution, a dissolution of the system, and everything changes.
yeah.
They've timed their idea of 15-minute cities for this moment too. They know
100.
what they're doing.
Absolutely, because the people in the shadows that are really behind the way in which the world or the matrix unfolds, they're all deeply initiated in occultists. And part of that pathway is you must learn the language of the stars and the cosmos. And if you want to do anything significant here, it must match that. Because if
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
there's
Well,
no
look,
correlation.
Well,
Yeah.
look, you're not gonna lift above the water unless you're surfing. And if you can't read this map and see the waves, then
Mhm.
you're not gonna then your thing is not gonna float to the top like that.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. So,
Yeah.
we go
But
back.
but your personal consultations are all about that. The,
Yeah, absolutely. It's how to navigate this. Okay, where am I at? Because on your little vessel, you might have some very significant personal things that you're going through you need to resolve before you can even try to think about what's going on in the actual river, right?
Mhm.
So my job is let's get you clarity around that. Let's get you empowered to get back into alignment because really it's time
Yeah.
now to sort of be where you need to be able to survive what's coming.
Well, look,
And
and when your issues are clearly defined, they're so much easier to resolve.
absolutely, because the thing that causes us to struggle is because we don't know. But we don't know because we don't have awareness. So
Yep.
astrology is a tool to bring awareness to go, ah.
All
And
right.
once you have that, now you can take the awareness and make changes.
All
Uh,
right. But going back to the big picture,
yes.
I'm seeing Pluto in Aquarius, which is the dissolution of, I want the status quo would be a really good.
Yeah, the I guess it's redefining the rules of the game in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Crushing the lie, breaking the, yeah. You've got Uranus in Aries, which is breaking the collective dream or war on the collective dream.
Well, you got Neptune in Aries. Yep. Pluto's in
Yep. So
Aquarius.
Neptune in Aries.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
And,
Absolutely. It's an
and,
awakening of the spiritual warrior as well.
yep.
Yep.
And
Underneath it.
Uranus is the sharp realization, the sharp event that changes the landscape across
Yeah.
the board.
From the biblical perspective, the book of Revelation, right?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor or an allegory to say it's revelation because you're awakening to something, right? And
hmm
that revelation, the planet of revelation, in other words, to something to be unveiled or to be revealed is Uranus. And his force, because he's one of the primordial gods, his force is chaotic. And if not directed in a way, it can create some major shit storms, right? Because it just destroys the old reality completely. So, they talk about this, the Great Reset.
Hmm.
These three alignments, September 11, COVID 2020, and now we have this. All of those pre-events were a lead up to this astrological alignment, this shift, because this is their opportunity for the reset.
Yeah,
And you're going to create the chaos, right? Because there needs to be the reaction for the people. And they've
yeah,
already got their solution they're going to roll out, and
yeah.
that's going to help them reset the currency and reset. Well, I feel long term that'll fail, right? Because it needs 100% worldwide take up, and we're not going to get that.
And I don't see that happening either. I don't see
No.
that happening either. Yeah, look, and like the team that is governing this, who is most aware of this, would the Freemasons have a motto. It's Ordem do Chaos, and that means order from chaos. And what they don't say is that they're the ones creating the chaos so that they can impose the order that they prefer.
It's manufactured chaos. Absolutely.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like you
And
look.
what better time to do it? They don't look at the calendar, they look at the sky clock, you know,
Yeah,
and they want,
well, obviously they have, because this is the crunch time. This is the moment where everything comes together, and this astrological alignment in the next, how long would you say?
well, interestingly, now they've come into this unification with each other. We have a little reprieve from October till about January next year. But
Mhm.
from January next year, these outer planets will hold this position for the next 7 years.
So
So
from January 26 for the next 7 years.
2032, 2033 is when they'll sort of this alignment, you know, dissipates enough for it to no longer be effective.
Right, okay. So from January 26 for 7 years, we're going to have a time of chaos, disillusion, warfare, and upheaval before, and that's what it takes to bring in the golden era or the age of slavery.
Yeah, so they've got the artificial version of this, which is part of their reset, which they want
Yeah.
to then, which helps them maintain their level of control again. And they will
Okay.
try, and there'll be casualties, but ultimately it fails.
Well, look, and previously when they're in trouble, they have no problem kicking off an event that kills millions of people. They have absolutely no issue doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
that's one of their favorite cards to play when they're in trouble.
yeah, absolutely. And it's hard for the average person to sort of comprehend that, but you're coming from your conscious awareness, and they don't share the same,
Well,
you
look, they don't have empathy, so
know.
and for them, mathematically, one of me versus a million of other people, I'm clearly more valuable, so they have to die.
Yeah.
And if and that's hideous logic to embrace,
Mhm.
but they've done that. They're already there.
Yeah. Yeah. The last three Star Wars movies, uh,
Yep.
7, 8, 9,
Yep.
are a good to watch them symbolically because they foreshadow pretty much this whole story,
Hmm.
and they give a lot of clues as to how to get through and what you do and how you navigate. So
Oh, so you've given me an excuse to watch the Star Wars movies? I
yeah,
can. I'm here for you.
yeah.
I'll watch that.
Yeah. The final order in the last one, and just watch the final order and what how they bring down the final order as well. That's really telling.
Mhm.
Little things that look a lot like 5G towers that they have to go over, and they go, let's take out their communication. It's like, oh, they look like 5G towers to me.
Who'd
But
have
anyway.
thunk it? Who'd have thunk it? Like, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and you've got the Pluto Uranus energy. They're both air signs.
Hmm.
So air brings in this aspect of the digital age.
I see
Um,
that.
but also with Pluto and Aquarius, um, and Uranus in Gemini, we're also dealing with the influence of AI, the artificial intelligence, so to speak, which, is a big component to this because I feel like that's what they want to reset into. Um, and that's why I feel like it's not going to work
Well,
because
look, and yeah, there is actually somebody who knows the future of what happens when a planet embraces AI.
yes.
And you should see Penny Bradley on, I
Okay.
think she's on Rumble.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I want to have her on the show, but she scares the bejesus out of me. And not much bothers me, but she spooks me like nothing else.
Yeah.
So you should definitely check her out.
You know, it's like we're created in the image of God and man creates in the image of himself.
Hmm.
So when we do that, we separate like that. And just the very thing like intelligence, right?
Hmm.
There is intellectual intelligence, right? The
Hmm.
mind, but then there's heart intelligence, so there's emotional intelligence. There's natural intelligence. Like there's many different aspects of it,
Oh,
whereas
no,
the artificial
you're speaking.
aspect,
You're speaking about Gardner, the theorist Gardner. He talked about inter IQ, then he talked about emotional intelligence, kinetic intelligence, spatial intelligence, like other linguistic intelligence, like this. He had 32 different kinds of intelligence, and he pared it down to eight.
yeah,
But
right.
yeah, look, but
But
I do see the focus on the hyper intellectual
yes.
as being what leads us to AI, or
Yeah,
is what sort of throws AI highest in the air out of all of this.
100%. Because
Yeah.
they're elevating that aspect of intelligence to God. And that's
Well, they're
that's
going
the
to they're going to give it the powers of a god.
yeah,
Just I would just wish we could trust it, like
yeah,
to be benevolent.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I'm just doing a video about how many people have committed suicide talking to Chat GPT.
wow,
Yeah.
yeah, phenomenal.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's also supported by these air signs that are coming in.
Mhm.
So it's like it's a perfect cover for them to roll out their next agenda, problem, reaction, solution, the organized chaos to create the order
Yeah.
from it. So it's absolutely lockstep going ahead as if it would, and the planetary alignments are like, we haven't seen in so long. It's like, oh, this is what they're using as the cover of their agenda. But we can feed into that by accepting it, going along with it,
Hmm.
consenting to it, or we can feed into it by resisting it, or there's a third way, which is we walk right out of the machine. Hello, um, you know, uh, what's the Salisbury Hill, Peter Gabriel's song, when he has that awakening and he
Yeah.
walks right out of the machine. And I think that's the pathway for me. It's like, actually, you know what? I don't want to be on this vessel or this river anymore. I'm going to walk out of this river. I'm not choosing to allow this river to be the river that affects me anymore.
Well,
And
look, if it's not a contest between red and blue, you can choose yellow and do something else altogether. And
yeah, there's a
that's the big debate. Or let's sorry, it's not the big debate. It's where I'm at because, in my opinion, red can defeat blue. Like, and that's we have a whole team of people for it, but that's a debate probably for another episode, like
Yeah, yeah. So, when there's conflict, there's usually one side against another side.
mhm.
Well, don't be on either side.
Yeah,
Like, when it comes to that, like I don't have to be at that level. I
I
can
don't
be,
have to engage with that. Yeah.
yeah, I don't have to engage. I have to let that define my reality. Now, that might mean that moving through reality is a lot more difficult and you have to take more responsibility, but the pathway to freedom comes with a lot of responsibility. That's why most people choose dependency.
That
Um,
and that, that's what human independence looks like. If we have to take absolute responsibility for everything that's going on here. And
yes.
if we don't, then it's kind of like if we expect the Pleiadians or Trump or Q or the White Hats or something, it's akin to the kid moving out of home but moving in with his uncle. It's not really them asserting their independence because they're not taking absolute responsibility for their environment. And
Well,
whichever way you want to do that, that's the goal. That's what we're playing for. Those are the stakes at the moment, I think.
absolutely. Well, you look at it like this in the age of Pisces, which we're sort of coming to the end of, merging
Hmm.
into this new dawn of a new age. In the age of Pisces, we had Jesus was the savior for our sins, right?
Hmm.
Forgive the Father, they know not what they do. We had this savior God. So you've got people that are still caught up in that ideology looking for the savior. And is it going to be Trump or is it going to be the guy? Well, we're moving to the age of Aquarius. You save yourself. Like you have to save yourself. That's in the
Yeah.
awakening. Jesus isn't coming. Jesus is within you. The consciousness that he represents, the Christ consciousness, it's the awakening that within you.
Well, look,
So
yeah, there's a few saviors that didn't quite work out. Richard Branson was supposed to save us all, and then Vladimir Putin was supposed to save us all. Now Donald Trump's supposed to save us all, but the mask is slipping.
yeah,
And is Elon Musk going to save us all? I think he's integral to what to
of course,
the bad guys' plan here. Yeah, so it really is about giving up on savior concept, like
100%.
absolutely abandoning it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Now, that's not to say that you can't support your loved ones and your community and help, and but ultimately, like you have to be the one to take control and responsibility for your life, your vessel, your journey. And yet through that, you're able then to connect to community, like-minded people, the tribe, the sense of belonging. And I feel like that's a Pluto and Aquarius thing, is that power is going to be in the collective of sense of like, we can have differences, but we can come together on a common cause. And that's going to be something that's really useful through this next, 2 to 5 years, is to have some community, whether it's virtual and they're online, like, through these
Mhm.
platforms, or whether it's literal in your environment, you've built it. But ultimately, community is most important. The final thing I'll say, I'm just mindful of the time, is the Saturn energy moving into Aries. So Saturn and Neptune are having a conjunction, and that doesn't actually technically happen until February next year, but we're in the dawn of this, new alignment. The last time that alignment occurred was 89, 90, and that coincided with the collapse of the Soviet Union and the coming down of the Berlin Wall. So again, you've got to put your mindset
So
into
just
the.
one more collapse card to play there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because of Neptune, disillusionment, Saturn, the current authority, the current rules, the current boundaries of society,
That's
that's Saturn.
totally up for grabs. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Neptune is the disillusionment, a dissolving of that. Now, their conjunction into Aries, we haven't seen for thousands of
Yeah.
years.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, again,
Wow.
Saturn, you have to become responsible for yourself, Aries, right? Radical self-responsibility. So you're not
Wow.
caught up in the Great Reset. You're not caught up in the agenda. You're not caught up in the propaganda. You're not caught up in the war machine or the theater of it, because you've got radical.
Because you're busy doing your own thing, looking
Exactly,
after yourself.
exactly. And
Yep.
that's the sort of these alignments with that Saturn energy. Saturn's always like a marker of time. And
Hmm.
it's the defining marker of time, is to sort of say, well, look, the Berlin Wall came down and what that represented. The last Saturn Pluto conjunction was literally at the beginning of 2020. So it marks that time period. The Jupiter Saturn conjunction in 2000 coincided with the 2001, um, you know, catastrophe that's
Yeah,
organized.
the great health crisis, the manufactured
Exactly,
health
right?
crisis. Yeah.
So you always have this marker of time. And what time is it? Well, we look up there and we see, oh, this is what time it is. Now, in context to that, how do I take responsibility? How do I become my own authority? If you don't become your authority, you succumb to external authority.
Then
And
somebody else is going to do it for you.
exactly. And that those times are gone now. It's time to sort of wake up and reclaim your sovereignty and your
Yeah.
authority and say, right, I'm going to take responsibility for myself. So
Yeah.
I'm not dependent. When you become independent, you become the boss. And that's Saturn. And if you aren't the boss, someone else is going to be.
Yep. And in a planetary sense, either we figure out how to be the boss of this planet, or some other species, be they reptilian or otherwise, are going to show up and do it for us.
Absolutely. And what we have to individually do and then come together as a collective is do that and wrestle that authority away from the clutches of the system. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that well, look, I'm sure you use this phrase all the time, but to live in interesting times, well, this is crunch time. This is if ever there was a moment where, all of your dreams and hopes, if you wanted to rewrite society, if you wanted to rebuild something, pull out all the stops, make your plans, and execute, because there is never gonna be a better time than now, ever.
And living your life, running your own path, and being responsible for that, and doing what you need to do is an act of defiance against this. So that's another way to navigate through this, is you don't have to allow what's happening, whether there's a new economic system, whether there's war, or anything. You
Oh,
don't have to allow that story to be your story.
well, they love conflict in the 3D and they're good at it. Let's not be funny about it. So it's best to just avoid the entire game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Detachment or non-attachment, where you can just go straight through, right?
yeah.
I can
Well,
observe, I can witness, I can bear witness, but I don't have to allow myself to define myself. But Pluto in Aquarius, we want to avoid the polarities. Stay
mhm,
away from, because what happens, Pluto in Aquarius, we get these extreme polarization. You can already see that happening, with race and religion and ethnicity and all these types of
where
things,
isn't it? Yeah.
getting so much, and gender, even like how they're
Mhm,
using gender as a way to polarize people. So the extremes with Pluto in Aquarius are usually unified through chaos or crisis. So
mhm.
the extremes get
So
annihilated through.
that, yeah, they've pushed us out and then it's going to crunch us back together. And,
Yeah,
let's see how that one plays out.
yeah.
Well,
But
Luke,
extremes is where the casualties are usually.
I hear
So
you. I hear
don't
you.
be on the extreme end of anything.
Well, look, I can't help myself sometimes. But, like,
You can dance and in a non-attached way,
oh,
but
look, and,
attaching to it, you
well,
know.
look, in our group, nobody's really, what's the word I'm looking for? Fanatical about it. We all laugh about this. Somebody's got to scrub the universal toilet because
Yeah,
if we don't do it, who else is going to do it?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
we're taking responsibility for everybody's toilet, so to speak. Yeah. Which is, it's a spiritual role that I wasn't quite. I wouldn't have volunteered for it. I don't know. I don't know. It's not one that everybody wanted to do. Let's put it that way.
Well, look, it is a very Pluto in Aquarius. It's a group of people coming together to do the deep, dark, dirty work.
Totally, totally. And
It's a
we're
very,
having a great time.
yeah,
Good time. Yeah, yeah. Well, look, thanks for coming along today, Luke, and sharing your genius with us. And
absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
all right, and I'm sure we'll be working together in the near future.
Absolutely, as always, mate. Love your
All right.
work.
Loved you
Cheers.
all. Bye for now.
Cheers.
You got to. Oh, do I press the button?